So I got all the screens installed now. The screen porch is finally complete. But for right now, I'll give you a recap of today's work just to see me wrap everything up. And then I'll come back for a walkthrough. Alright, so this week mostly consisted of me doing the screens and a couple other small tasks. So here you see me, I'm just pre-drilling the holes into the screen track material. It's like a powder-coated aluminum. And it comes with these, they're nice screws with a Roberts tip on them, a square tip. And they basically are self-tappers, but they do not stay steady enough on the drill, on the tip, to use them to actually drill the hole. So in the end, you need to pre-drill all the holes and then drill the self-tapping screws into the wood. It would be nicer if they had a pointed tip, and they would drill a little bit better, in my opinion. So, mostly, all the work with this system, the Screen Ease is what it's called, is just installing the track. All the pre-cutting, measuring, and then you pre-cut everything to the size, and you have to cut it with the plastic, I guess, spline piece, as you say. There's no spline like a traditional screen would have. The plastic outer cap acts as the spline and provides the tension. So you have to cut it with that on there so you get a miter. Now they do have a kit that you can buy where it has square corners, so you could cut it, and I think you have to cut it a certain amount short, and then these square pieces fit in to fill the gap. So that way you don't have to do miters. That might be a little bit easier, but it would add a little bit of a cost to it. So I mostly just spent all the time and installed all the tracks. You can see me here, this was a little bit of a pain because I had to use this right angle. I got this little right angle DeWalt attachment. It's pretty convenient. I mean, it would certainly be easier to have an actual right angle drill, but this gets the job done for the most part. I decided I wanted to go ahead and do this upper part above the door here. I just thought that would look nicer if it was screened. Once you get all the track in, you'll see that the screening part doesn't take much time at all. That is probably the nicest part of this system, and it gives a pretty good finish. Alright, so here I'm starting to install the screen, and like I said, the spline piece is essentially that plastic cap, and that provides the tension. So all you need to do is to cut those at the same time as the previous piece, and you just snap those on, and as it's being installed, it stretches the screen. You have to gently stretch it a little, but for the most part, all you have to do is just install it, and just the act of installing it provides the tension enough to stretch it out. So it's pretty nice. This is probably the ease part of the screen, and once you get to this point, you're basically going downhill. It goes very fast. So I just set up a mark there and was using a deck board just to give it a nice straight edge. Just making sure to not cut or scrape the deck board, of course, but I just ran out and I had just enough. So it's just repeating the process. I definitely would use this product at my own personal house. I plan on doing a screen porch in the future, and it will be all composite, and definitely this product gives a nice finish. I think if you were going for an all composite, my concern is always how deep those L pieces go back, that you could fit a piece of railing, because on the bottom, code says you need a railing, and I would want to use like a Trex rail. And I think you could just squeak that on there with the Trex railing. If you might just have to set the Trex railing back a slight bit, but it would give a nice finish, and it looks really nice. And even with the pressure treated on here, it actually had a pretty decent finish. The homeowner was happy with it, even though at first, you can see me there, I made a slight mistake, which is I turned it the wrong way, so I had to pull that spline and reset it, but just a minor hiccup. Once you get going with this, it is just very fast. And all you gotta do is trim the waste off and you're done. Now I move around to the side here. These are probably awkward because you can see I'm standing on the not a step. So don't try this at home. Just get an 8-foot ladder. And for the most part, it was pretty easy. The hardest piece is the very first one because you're so high up and you have to kind of juggle holding the piece and making sure it lines up and making sure that the tension is straight and you're getting it set in there correctly. Once you get that first piece going, plus because I put that metal drip edge on there, if you recall, it really complicated it a little bit. So I had to try to be cognizant to not slam that drip edge and bend it. So that's why you'll see me using the bottom wood end of the hammer. Actually there I made a little bit of a stain on the siding. You can kind of see a smudge. But yeah, you can see they just go in very tight, and it's a pretty nice finish. I would say that I've done screen porches before, and I use the solar type screening. I think that's what they call it at Depot. It's like a solar screen. It's like a tighter weave, so it's less visibility looking in, but looking out, of course, you can see fine. And a lot of people like that because it's more private. I would do that personally. It's almost shading. And once I get this one little section done here above the door, then I believe I go to re-screening the door. Because the homeowner wanted that gray screen. He really wanted the aluminum screen, but I could only use the actual fiberglass screen with this. So I just said, well, I'll rescreen this door because it was like a charcoal. And I just did this gray screen. And this went pretty easily. You always have to be careful when you're splining that you don't over-tension or kind of torque the door, but it worked out okay. And in the end, you can see me kind of testing the door, make sure that it's shutting well and it's seating nice. Everything worked fine. Alright, so this was the final thing that I had to do, which is a little bit of caulking here, because you could see through. So I just used some OSI quad caulk, white caulk. I had to loosen that gutter because I couldn't get back in there to the fascia line. And I just did the side over here. And at that point, the job is complete. So now I'll give you a brief walkthrough, let you know what I used. Mostly everything on this deck was pressure treated, as you can see. I did siding, just plain white double 5 Dutch lap on the bottom. Actually, I think it's double 4 Dutch lap. And this screen system I used, it's called Screen Ease, and it's very tedious to put in, but actually the screening part of it is quite easy, and it uses no spline. It just uses a plastic cap over a track, and that's what provides the tension. As you install the cap over it, it tightens up. So you just have to minimally tighten it to get the tension. So, mostly everything out here is self-explanatory. I'll just give you a brief walkthrough. As you've seen in the past here, I did this small boardwalk here. Just a plain set of stairs with 2x2 balusters. We'll take a walk up in here. It's just a kind of a standard entry door here. Stainless handle. They've got it set up inside here. And from the inside, it's all rough. No ceiling, no walls on the upper portion. But down below, as you saw in the previous video, I put this T111. So it's just kind of basic. Those screens turned out pretty good. Screen Ease. It's a pretty good product. I would recommend it. It's a nice clean finish. It's powder coated aluminum with these screws. These screws were kind of a pain. I wish they had zip based screws with a point. But these were self tappers, so you could drill through this, but it was a waste of time because these It's got these Roberts, or square as some people call them, tips, and they just are not tight enough to keep the screw straight, so it wobbles and it doesn't really cut through. So that's why later on I ended up drilling the holes, pre-drilling them all. But it does provide a nice clean finish. I think if you were going for a all composite look, you could sleeve these posts and do a AZAC ledge. So this would be white, and then the post would be white. And then if you wanted to on the outside, I guess you could do siding, and that would be white. It depends how you want to go about it, but you could get a all composite finish, and these would be white, and it would probably match pretty well. All right, so at this point, I'm calling this job complete, and I'll see you on the next project.